I was standing in my kitchen in Kelowna, still in my housecoat, waiting for the kettle to boil, when my phone lit up on the counter. It was a text from my son-in-law. Not my daughter. Him. "Hey, Georgette. Just so you know, Tanya and I are hosting Christmas at your place this year. Already let the family know. Probably around 28 people. You'll want to start thinking about what you're making." I read it twice. Then I set my phone face down on the counter, poured my tea, and stood by the window watching the neighbor's dog root around in the frost-hardened garden next door. The mountains were pink that morning. Beautiful, actually. The kind of morning that makes you feel like the world is still a decent place. I finished my tea. Then I picked up the phone and typed back one sentence. "That's wonderful that you're hosting, Bryce. You'll want to start looking into catering companies. I'll be at the lake house until the 27th. I sent it and put the kettle on again. Let me back up because none of this makes sense without the part that came before it. My name is Georgette. I'm 64 years old. I spent 31 years running a small accounting firm in the Okanagan, raised 2 children mostly on my own after my husband Terrence passed in 2009, and I have 3 grandchildren I would do absolutely anything for. I am not a difficult woman. I am not cold. Ask anyone who actually knows me, and they'll tell you I have always been the one who showed up, with food, with time, with whatever was needed. Every Easter, every Thanksgiving, every birthday dinner that required someone to actually make something from scratch, it was me. I never once complained about that. I genuinely loved it. But there's a difference between choosing to give and being volunteered. My daughter Tanya married Bryce 9 years ago. He's not a bad person. I want to be fair about that. He works hard, he's good to the grandchildren, and he's never been cruel. But he has this quality, this particular quality, that I have watched quietly for 9 years, where he treats the word family like it means everyone is a resource he can draw on without asking. He makes decisions and then announces them. He organizes things and assigns roles without consulting the people he's assigned. My daughter has started doing the same thing. I don't know if she learned it from him or if she always had that streak and he simply brought it out. But somewhere around year 4 of their marriage, she stopped asking me things and started telling me them. Last Christmas, for example. I found out 3 weeks before December 25th that I was expected to bring not just a dish but a full roast with all the sides, drive 2 hours to their house in Penticton, and stay for 4 nights. I had not been asked. I had been informed. When I mentioned gently that I'd actually been planning to spend a quiet Christmas at the lake house, just me and a few close friends, something I'd been looking forward to for months, my daughter looked at me like I'd said something in a foreign language. "But Mom," she said, "it's Christmas. You can't be alone at Christmas." I wasn't planning to be alone. I had plans. I had 3 friends coming, a turkey already ordered, and a bottle of Pinot Noir someone had brought me back from the Okanagan Wine Festival that I'd been saving specifically for that occasion. I canceled my plans and went to Penticton. I told myself it was fine. I told myself family comes first. I sat in my daughter's house for 4 nights and helped with the dishes and played with the grandchildren and smiled at Bryce's brother's wife when she made a comment about how lucky Tanya was to have such a helpful mother. And I drove home on the 29th feeling like something had been quietly taken from me. That was last Christmas. This year, I had decided things were going to be different. I'd spent the summer at the lake house, which is a small property about 40 minutes outside of Kelowna that Terrence and I bought in 1998. It's nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, a dock, a kitchen that's always been slightly too small, but it is mine, and I love it with a depth I can't quite explain to people who've never had a place like that. After Terrence died, it became the place where I went to feel like myself again. I've spent every summer there since 2009, and long stretches of fall and sometimes winter. What my daughter and son-in-law did not know, what I had decided not to share until the right moment, was that I had spent the previous spring doing something I probably should have done years ago. I had met with my estate lawyer, a very capable woman in Kelowna named who shall remain nameless for her own privacy, and we had restructured my holdings significantly. The Kelowna house, the house my daughter and Bryce had apparently already promised to 28 relatives as a Christmas venue, had been moved into a family trust. The beneficiaries were my 3 grandchildren. Not Tanya. Not Bryce. I am not a vindictive person. That was not the motivation. The motivation was that I had watched too many of my friends get into situations in their late 60s and 70s where family members made decisions on their behalf that they did not want made. And I had decided, quietly, and with the help of a professional, to get my affairs in order while I was still entirely capable of doing so. It was about protection and clarity. It was not about punishing anyone. But I will admit that when Bryce's text arrived that November morning, I felt something settle in my chest, like a stone finding the bottom of a lake. Calm. Clear. Already resolved. The response to my text did not come from Bryce. It came from my daughter, about 40 minutes later. "Mom, what do you mean you'll be at the lake house?" We told everyone. "Aunt Sherry is coming from Halifax. The Dunlops are coming from Calgary. You can't back out now." I noticed the phrase "back out," as though I had agreed to something, as though my house had been offered and I had confirmed and then was now, inconveniently, reversing course. I typed back. "I didn't back out, sweetheart. I was never in. No one asked me." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Bryce said he texted you." "He did, this morning." As a notification, not a question. More dots. Then, "Mom, can you please just call me?" I called her. She answered on the first ring, which told me she'd been sitting with the phone in her hand. "Mom!" Her voice had that particular tightness it gets when she's trying to sound reasonable but is actually quite frustrated. "This isn't about one dinner. This is about family. The grandkids are excited. Everyone's already made their travel plans." "I understand that," I said, "and I'm genuinely sorry if people are inconvenienced. But I didn't make those travel plans. I didn't invite anyone. I was informed of something after the fact, and I'm telling you that the lake house is where I'll be through Christmas. You're all welcome to join me there. There's the Ramada in town. It's lovely in winter. Or you can certainly look into renting a venue in Penticton. I'll even help you find one." Silence. "You're being really inflexible," she said. "I prefer consistent," I said. "I'll talk to you soon, Tanya." I hung up. The next 4 days were interesting. Bryce called. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message that was oddly formal, almost scripted, I thought, about how the family had been counting on this and how it would mean a lot to everyone, and how he just wanted to make sure I understood the scope of what was planned. 28 people. Extended family from 3 provinces. He said the word logistics 3 times. My daughter texted me a photograph of a seating chart. I am not joking. A seating chart. For my house, chairs I own, arranged by someone else with names I half recognized written in little boxes. Then her cousin Wren called. Tanya's first cousin on Terrence's side, a woman I have always been fond of and who I consider a genuine friend. I answered because I was happy to hear from her. "Georgette," she said, "I just want you to know, I'm not calling on anyone's behalf. I'm calling as your friend." "I know," I said. "That's why I picked up. She's worked up," Wren said. "Tanya, I think she genuinely believes you already agreed to this. I didn't." "I know that. I could tell from the timeline she described that you hadn't been asked." A pause. "Bryce is the one who made the announcement. He told people before he even talked to you, didn't he?" "He texted me the morning of the announcement," I said, as a courtesy heads up from the sound of it. Wren was quiet for a moment. "That's not okay." "No," I said. "It isn't. Are you all right?" "I'm better than all right," I said, and I meant it. "I've got a pot of soup on, and the forecast looks good for the rest of the week, and I have absolutely nothing to feel guilty about." She laughed, which is one of the things I've always loved about Wren. Then she said, "There's something else you should probably know." I sat down. "Bryce has been telling some people, not everyone, but some, that you've been a little confused lately, forgetting things, having trouble keeping track of plans." I set down my spoon very slowly. "He mentioned it to my mother," Wren said. "She told me. She was worried about you." "And was he specific?" I said carefully. "About which plans I'd supposedly forgotten. Just that you'd been hard to pin down, that you'd agreed to things, and then reversed." I sat with that for a moment. The soup bubbled quietly on the stove. Outside the window, 2 cedar waxwings were working through what was left of the rowan berries on the tree by the fence. "Wren," I said, "I appreciate you telling me. I thought you should know." "I should," I said. "And I want you to know, I'm going to need you to remember this conversation." That evening, I called my estate lawyer. I'm going to call her Miss R because she values her privacy, and I value her tremendously. I explained the situation. She listened without interrupting, which is one of her best qualities. "So the plan to quietly restructure and not announce the trust. You're thinking you may need to move that timeline up," she said. I said, "that if my son-in-law is telling family members that I'm confused and forgetful, and simultaneously trying to use my home as a Christmas party venue without my permission, I would like there to be no ambiguity about ownership. Sooner rather than later." "Understood," she said. "Come in Thursday." I went in Thursday. Miss R had prepared documentation confirming the trust that I could share, not to wave in anyone's face, but so that I had it in hand when the time came. She also gently suggested that I keep records of communications going forward, just in case. She did not say, just in case of what, and I did not ask. We both understood. I drove home through the valley in the last of the afternoon light, and I thought about Terence, the way I often do when something important is happening. He was a quiet man who believed in doing things properly and without drama. He would not have made a scene, but he would have had the documents in order. I thought, "You'd be proud of me, Ter." A week before Christmas, Tanya called again. Her voice was different this time, less tight, more conciliatory. She'd had time to recalibrate. "Mom, I think we got off on the wrong foot." "I think someone made a decision without asking me," I said pleasantly. "But I'd love to start fresh." "Bryce and I were talking," she said, "and we think, if you're not comfortable hosting at your place, maybe we could come to the lake house? The kids would love it. And you wouldn't have to do everything. We could bring food. My lake house has 2 bedrooms. 28 people would not be coming to the lake house." "How many people are you thinking?" I asked. "Well, just us, our family, me and Bryce and the kids." "I would love that," I said, and I meant it. "Come on the 23rd. Stay through Boxing Day. I'll make the shortbread." "Really?" She sounded genuinely surprised, as if she'd expected more resistance. "Really?" I said. "That's always been my favorite kind of Christmas anyway." She went quiet for a second. Then, "What about everyone else?" "Aunt Sherry and the Dunlops." "That's really something you and Bryce will need to sort out," I said gently. "But if it would help, I can send you the number for the Ramada in West Bank. They do a lovely holiday package." She came. The whole family came. Tanya and Bryce and the 3 grandchildren, Hugo and Simone and little Prue, who is 6 and obsessed with birds, and spent the entire first afternoon standing at the window with a pair of binoculars asking me what everything was. "That's a nuthatch," I told her. "What's a nuthatch?" "A very stubborn bird that walks down trees head first." She pressed her nose to the glass. "I want to be a nuthatch." "You already are," I said. Bryce was quiet for most of the first day, which I took as a reasonable response to the situation. I was not unkind to him. I served him good food, and I did not once bring up the seating chart, or the voicemails, or the word logistics. That's not the kind of person I want to be. On the second evening, after the grandchildren were in bed and Tanya had gone for a bath, Bryce sat down across from me at the kitchen table with a glass of wine and said, "I owe you an apology." I looked at him. "I handled it badly," he said. "I got ahead of myself. I should have asked." "Yes," I said. "You should have." I didn't think it would be a big deal. I considered that for a moment. "Bryce," I said, "I'm going to say something and I'd like you to hear it. My home is not a venue. It's not a family asset. It belongs to me, and actually, at this point, to a trust I've set up for the grandchildren. But the point is, it's not something that's available to be scheduled without my knowledge. Not at Christmas. Not at any other time." He went still. "A trust?" "Yes. I sorted my estate out earlier this year. It's all quite organized." I said it pleasantly, the way you'd mentioned that you'd had the furnace serviced. No edge, just information. He sat with that for a long moment. I watched him process it, the sequence of things. The announcement to the family, the attempt to use my house, the things he'd apparently said about my memory. And now the quiet revelation that the house he'd been scheduling was already spoken for in a legal document he'd known nothing about. I also want to mention, I said, just as pleasantly, that a few people shared with me what you'd been saying, about me being confused, forgetting things. His face changed. I'm not confused, I said. I'm organized. There's a difference. I'd appreciate it if you didn't say that kind of thing again. It worries people unnecessarily, and it isn't true. He nodded. He was looking at the table. Bryce. I waited until he looked up. I genuinely like you. I think you're good to my daughter and good to those kids. I'm not trying to make an enemy of you. I'm just telling you clearly, the way I wish someone had told you earlier. Ask before you assume. He exhaled slowly. Yeah, he said. Okay. Good. I stood up and refilled my wine glass. Now, do you want to play cards? I've got rummy and cribbage, and I will absolutely destroy you at either one. He looked up, and for the first time in about 3 weeks, he actually smiled. Christmas morning was quiet and cold and exactly what I had wanted. The grandchildren were up at 6, because grandchildren are always up at 6, and Hugo had apparently been awake since 4 thinking about the presents. Prue found a bird book under the tree. The Sibley's Guide to Birds of Eastern and Western North America, which I'd ordered in October, and she sat with it in her lap for most of the morning in complete reverent silence, occasionally looking up to announce something. Grandma, the Nuthatch is in here. Page 412. I know, I said. I bookmarked it. She looked at me with an expression of complete, unironic joy. That's the thing about 6-year-olds. They don't know how to pretend. Whatever they feel is right there on the surface. Tanya made breakfast. She insisted, which I allowed, and Bryce cleaned up after without being asked, which I noticed and appreciated. It was not a dramatic rehabilitation. It was just a small thing done quietly, which is often how things actually change. After lunch, when the kids had gone outside with their father to skate on the rink, a neighbor keeps up on the property across the road, Tanya and I sat at the kitchen table with our tea, and for a while, we didn't say much. The sun came through the window and lay flat across the wood, and the bird feeders were busy, and it was the most peaceful I'd felt in months. I'm sorry, she said finally. I should have asked you. Before any of it. Yes, I said. You should have. I think I've gotten used to assuming. I know, I said. I noticed. She was quiet. When did that start? Gradually, I said, the way these things usually do. She looked out at the feeders. I don't want to be someone who does that. Then don't be, I said simply. That's actually the whole solution. She laughed a little, reluctant and real. I'm not going anywhere, I said. I'll be here. I'll make the shortbread, and I'll come for the grandchildren's concerts. And I will always, always pick up when you call, but I need you to ask me. I need to be a person you're inviting, not a resource you're accessing. She nodded. Her eyes were a little bright. She gets that from me. She always has. Okay, she said. Okay, I said. We drank our tea. Outside, I could hear Prue shrieking with laughter at something her father had done on the ice, and little Simone's voice carrying high and clear over the cold, and Hugo's deeper one trying to sound unimpressed and failing completely. I thought about all the Christmases I'd spent managing and organizing and producing and showing up. I thought about Terrence, who had always been the one to say, sit down. Georgie, you've done enough, let me. I thought about how long it had been since I'd just sat somewhere in December and felt warm. The Nuthatch appeared at the feeder. Upside down on the suet block, the way they always are, perfectly comfortable in a position that would be impossible for anything else. Prue was going to love that. I made a note to call her over when she came inside.